In February 2025, an unannounced visit by Carole Middleton to Buckingham Palace changed everything. A woman long perceived as a peripheral figure, simply the mother of the Princess of Wales, delivered a quiet but seismic message that sent shockwaves through the monarchy. Carrying a leather briefcase, Carole Middleton walked into the heart of royal power, not just as a concerned grandmother or a sidelined in-law, but as a strategist, a documentarian, and a woman with something to prove. This unfolding saga wasn't born out of scandalous headlines or tabloid fodder. It was built over more than a decade of subtle snubs, rigid protocol, and quiet battles for familial inclusion. Behind every royal photo op lay years of tension, particularly between Carole and Queen Camilla. And while the world saw smiles and ceremonial grace, what brewed behind the palace walls was a mother's restrained frustration turned into meticulous strategy. Carole Middleton's discomfort within royal circles began early, before the wedding of her daughter Catherine to Prince William in 2011. Though she had carved a successful life alongside her husband Michael through their business party pieces, Carole's middle-class background marked her as an outsider in a world where lineage carried more weight than merit. At first, the signs were subtle: cold shoulders at gatherings, disinterest in her input for wedding preparations, and dismissive attitudes from certain members of the royal household. Camilla, Duchess of Cornwall at the time, was among those reportedly skeptical of Carole's growing influence. Having grown up aristocratic, Camilla understood and valued the unspoken hierarchies of royal life. Carole, by contrast, had built her world from the ground up, and that difference was neither forgettable nor forgivable in royal eyes. These tensions intensified after the royal wedding. Carole was increasingly kept at a distance from her daughter, and her access to her grandchildren became complicated by rigid royal schedules. Though Kate remained close to her family emotionally, Carole often found her visits cut short or blocked by other commitments. Holidays like Christmas, once celebrated intimately with her children, became exclusive royal traditions she was no longer invited to share. Carole hoped that the birth of Prince George in 2013 would usher in a new, more inclusive chapter. After all, she was now the grandmother of a future king. Yet, even then, the palace enforced firm boundaries. Royal nannies were prioritized, and Carole's offers of help were politely declined. These restrictions were not simply about class, they were about control. Rumors swirled that Queen Camilla supported keeping the Middletons at a distance to preserve tradition and limit outsider influence. At Princess Charlotte's christening in 2015, a deeply personal plan of Carole's to host a small, warm family celebration was reportedly canceled by Camilla's office at the last minute. The incident was another blow in a series of small humiliations that quietly accumulated over time. Still, Carole remained composed. She never made public complaints, but she began to withdraw from palace life. Her absence from royal events grew noticeable, and her deliberate retreat was not driven by spite, but by a quiet refusal to be overlooked. She would not be a prop in photo ops. She wanted to be a real part of her grandchildren's lives. In 2018, during Prince Charles's 70th birthday celebration, Carole reportedly overheard a conversation between Camilla and her friends that struck a nerve. A subtle, backhanded remark about new money and heritage was taken by Carole and those who knew the family dynamic as a pointed jab. No names were mentioned, but the message was clear. To some royals, the Middletons would always be outsiders, no matter how close their daughter was to the crown. Rather than lashing out, Carole made a choice. She began documenting every cancellation, every quiet exclusion, every change in protocol that limited her involvement was noted. She wasn't just observing, she was building a case. Not for a public scandal, but for personal clarity and eventual action. Carole Middleton's visit to Buckingham Palace in February 2025 marked a pivotal shift. She arrived alone, with no press, and carried a briefcase said to contain documents, names, and financial records, allegedly detailing troubling patterns. Whispers began to surface. Off-the-record meetings in Switzerland, suspicious charity transactions, bank transfers through shell companies. What she uncovered wasn't just financial, it was systemic. The documents reportedly revealed a long-term effort to marginalize the Middletons, both in influence and presence. The orchestrator? Allegedly, Queen Camilla. Sources claim Camilla was unprepared for what Carole brought. Visibly shaken, she reportedly left the room in tears. Days later, she vanished from public view for over a week. Meanwhile, the palace went into damage control. Schedules shifted, former aides were called in, and royal communications became unusually tight-lipped. It wasn't just an emotional confrontation, it was a formal reckoning. And Carole wasn't acting alone. Her deep network of business connections and her years of navigating elite circles quietly supported her campaign for accountability. As this royal drama unfolded, all eyes turned to Catherine, Princess of Wales. Since marrying into the family, Kate had walked a tightrope, balancing royal expectations with her family roots. She had been trained in palace protocol, groomed for public life, and praised for her grace. But her mother's struggle was never far from her mind. In the wake of Carole's February 2025 meeting, Kate's role began to shift noticeably. Her engagements increased. Her presence in internal palace meetings was more pronounced. Most symbolically, her office was moved closer to King Charles's, a sign of growing influence. Kate's public image also evolved. She began presenting a more accessible version of royalty, recycling older outfits, embracing relatable causes, and sharing candid family moments online. These gestures weren't accidents. They were part of a broader effort to modernize the monarchy and realign its values. Carole's move didn't spark chaos, it sparked recalibration. Behind the scenes, the monarchy began to adjust. Some staff grew wary of Carole's influence, while others sympathized with her frustrations. The Queen's behavior became increasingly formal. Invitations dwindled. Interactions with the Middletons grew colder. Yet Carole's presence lingered, not as an intruder, but as a reminder. Her silence wasn't passive, it was strategic. She had documented everything, and now the palace knew she was no longer willing to be sidelined. She had proven she could navigate their world on her terms, and she had demanded to be taken seriously. For years, Queen Camilla had embraced her own transformation, from scandalized mistress to respected monarch. Yet, in reinforcing royal traditions, she may have misjudged the strength and resolve of a mother like Carole Middleton. Carole's reckoning didn't come in the form of a tabloid takedown or dramatic tell-all. It arrived as a whisper, carried in a briefcase, through quiet determination. And the royal family, known for their preference for silence over spectacle, was forced to listen. Now, in the aftermath, the royal landscape is evolving. Kate and William stand more united than ever. Their leadership style is shifting toward empathy, transparency, and inclusion, values instilled by Carole. And while no public statement has confirmed the contents of that fateful briefcase, the change in palace tone says enough. In many ways, this was Carole Middleton's Diana moment. Not a rebellion, but a reckoning. A stand not against the monarchy, but for fairness, presence, and the right to be part of her daughter and grandchildren's lives without being made to feel less than. The question now isn't whether Carole Middleton belongs in the royal picture. It's how far her quiet influence will reach. Because in a palace where power is rarely loud, sometimes the most disruptive force is the one no one sees coming.